teach a Year 6 class at Willow Park, and I'm also supposedly in charge of e-learning. And like I've said, we think that the pedagogy that sits behind the use of e-learning tools enables them to be used effectively rather than, like they've said, expensive pencils. So I was talking to a blended e-learning facilitator who's part of the consortium the other day, and he was saying that he reckons that blended e-learning is the biggest pedagogical mind shift that teachers will go through in their career. And I questioned him on that because I thought, well, what about assessment for learning? That seems to me to be a huge pedagogical shift for teachers. And he said, well, the assessment for learning is, yeah, it's huge, but it's well documented, well researched. There are companies all over the world that facilitate it really well, and people all over the world have been doing those sorts of practices for a very long time. The problem with 21st century education or blended e-learning or future-focused pedagogy is that people aren't really sure what exactly it is and how exactly it works, what should be part of it. Different elements of it have been researched really well, but we're not quite sure how exactly to implement it in our classrooms and our schools. I think as teachers we're very good at getting really excited about these little trends in education, like we've probably had TV stations in our schools and done podcasting and got excited about iPads and now bring your own device or bring your own browser. And we get hooked into these trends, and it's hard to see the bigger picture of how this all fits together and how these e-learning tools can be used really effectively in a classroom. So I've developed this approach called My Learning as a response to this sort of lack of clarity around what exactly blended e-learning in 21st century education actually looks like, and to ensure that e-learning tools are used really effectively within the classroom. So it's called My Learning because, well, actually going back to the previous principal, he named it, not me, so I can't take credit. But the idea behind it is that it's very learner-centred and it's about learning things I want to learn at my pace, at a time that suits me, what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about, whatever. So as you can see, there's nothing overly new here. Down the bottom with formative assessment, personalisation, self-direction, inquiry, e-learning. They're all stuff that we've been doing for quite some time. I guess the difference here is that it's the way it's kind of packaged together and pulled together all these elements into a kind of seamless but also concrete idea of what 21st century education could look like. I'm not arrogant enough to say I found the holy grail, but it is something that's worked really well for our kids and the teachers in Year 6 at our school. So the bottom here is basically what the teacher does in the classroom. So they use assessment for learning practices, they use that to personalise the learning for the kids and to also allow children to personalise learning for themselves. So we're teaching them to be effective learners rather than teaching them to be taught really well. And then self-direction, they plan their own time and manage their own time really well. And then inquiry and e-learning. So all of those things together enable the devices to be used really well. So in a second in a little bit, you'll be able to go through a couple of the Year 6 classes and see what this looks like in practice. And then two of the My Learning teachers will come and talk to you about how their practice has changed as a result of implementing a more 21st century approach to teaching as opposed to adding devices and things on top of a more old-fashioned or 19th century way of teaching. So I won't ramble on any longer about this. Talking to the kids, you'll learn way more than you could ever learn from me about the kinds of things that we're doing here at Willow Park. And obviously the two My Learning teachers will give you more information as well.